Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December meeting of the Cleveland C# VB.NET User Group. We have a few new names on the list this month, so I want to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Sam Nasser, and I'm the lead organizer for the group. We meet once a month. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover any and all topics related to .NET. You can find meeting information for both future meetings as well as past meetings on the Meetup site with the link listed there. Also, if you take a look at the chat window, you'll notice that I posted two links, one for the YouTube channel where tonight's meeting will be posted, as well as my blog where I have the tech events listed there as well. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get notifications when the video has been edited and uploaded. I would like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Tech Systems, Inedo, makers of Buildmaster, PostSharp, and NIS Technologies for the web hosting. Some general information. Although it's a virtual meeting, please keep in mind that participation is encouraged. You can jump in by questions via chat or verbally as you like. However, we kindly ask that when you're not asking a question or commenting, to just simply mute your mic to avoid any background noise. And the whole intention is we would like to make it as much of a roundtable discussion as much as possible. Tonight's presentation is Introduction to .NET 5 by Jeff Fritz. Jeff is a principal program manager for the .NET Developer Division at Microsoft. He leads the organization of the online components of Microsoft's top developer events. He's also an avid Twitcher and YouTuber, and founder of Live Coders stream team. You can also catch him on Fritz and Friends on Twitch TV with the link listed below. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jeff and we'll make him presenter.
Hello, hello. All right.
Thank you for joining us, Jeff.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Let me try and yep, I'm waiting for a presenter and I can start presenting. Hey, there we go. All right. I just want, rats, it's gonna limit me to the application. Let's do this. So here's the thing, friends. I invested in a brand new, and I did myself a solid here, and I got myself a brand new display for the holiday, and it's an ultra wide screen, 43 inches, 21 by 9, really wide screen. The problem is when you go to share a screen on something like this, it looks really bad, like really bad. So what I'm going to do is resize my screen, and there we go, and I will change to this. Yeah, that'll work. It turned off my camera. Do we have my camera back on? There I am. And I can do this, and now you should be able to see what's going on over here. Oh. There we go, and let me open up chat. So here's the thing, friends. Like Sam mentioned, I'm a frequent streamer. I'm on Twitch all the time. I am more than happy to take your questions in chat as we're going along. Between every few slides, I'll take a peek over at chat. If you have any questions, please stop me. I am more than happy to stop and answer your questions. This isn't about me reading through some slides and showing some demos. This is about you understanding more about .NET 5 and all the great stuff that's been announced and has been made available as part of .NET 5. So please interrupt me. It's most important that you understand what's going on, and we have a good time along the way, I think. So my name is Jeff Fritz. You can find me everywhere. I am C# Fritz, CSHARP Fritz. That's Twitter, Twitch, GitHub, Instagram, TikTok. PayPal. I'm C# Fritz everywhere. I founded the Live Coders stream team. That's about 200 folks that stream on Twitch and teach about and educate folks with technology, whether it's writing software, building hardware, 3D printing, making keyboards, any technology really. We've got them covered. Java, Go, Rust, JavaScript, .NET, of course, Unity game development, C++ game development, all kinds of great stuff. Make sure you check them out. livecoders.dev is where you can find out more information about that group. But I'm here to talk to you about .NET 5 tonight. Where's the clock? I got to keep my eye on the clock. All right. We're going to talk about .NET 5 tonight. All kinds of great stuff that was announced as part of .NET Conf back in November. It was the 10th anniversary of .NET Conf. We were thrilled to celebrate 10 years of virtual conferences. We've been doing this for 10 years with .NET Conf. I'm proud to have been part of the last 5. We even did one remotely there in the middle from Sweden. We were in Stockholm, and we kicked off the event from Stockholm. It was amazing, and we host these now every November going forward. It was, what, 80 hours? 80 hours of free .NET content. No, not 80. 80 sessions, 40-some hours, live online. Make sure you there's all kinds of live virtual events going on over the next month or two, and you're going to find us hosting another one in November next year. So we announced .NET 5 is generally available. You can get this wherever fine .NETs are sold at .net/get.net 5. You see the URL down there at the bottom. So tons of great features. I can't even fit them all in on one slide here. Single file applications, smaller container images. So single file applications, meaning you can build an application with just one C# file. Our container images, our Docker container images, are as small as double-digit kilobytes. There's web and cloud investments that have been made into this version. We want to make sure that you have a tremendous web and cloud development experience. Windows desktop development enhancements, that's Windows Forms, that's WPF. We have designers now available for you in Visual Studio that you can use. ARM64 support, Windows ARM64, love seeing that and supporting the additional chipsets there. Continued performance improvements, .NET 5 continues to be the fastest commercial framework available for you out there. And of course, new C#9, F#5 language features. We're going to go through and do some interactive demos on C#9 a little bit later. Make sure you get your hands on it. .NET, get .NET 5. So, and cool, thanks. Sam sharing the links out for the YouTube so you can get the recording a little bit later. All right. .NET 5 adoption continues. It's been amazing. There are 5 million .NET developers, active developers in the Visual Studio family. More than 200,000 folks have migrated their Windows Forms and WPF applications to .NET Core. 230,000 first-time developers with .NET Core, and more than 2 million publishes per month to Linux from Visual Studio. That's a lot. Right? I mean, 5 years ago, we just birthed the concept of .NET Core, and now .NET on Linux wasn't even possible with a Microsoft branded version of .NET. 2 million publications to Linux. That's amazing. And that's per month, right? We're talking almost 25 million a year, right? We're probably going to cross 25 million over the next year. Love seeing that. Love seeing so many folks that are excited and continue to grow the .NET experience. So I'm going to start off by talking about a recap of where we were with .NET 5 and how and where we've gone with it, because there's a little bit of a story here of what our vision was for completing .NET 5, and then pandemic happened, and like many folks, we did have to cut back on a few things, not a lot. A few things, but we still hit some pretty lofty goals along the way to deliver a .NET 5 version for you here in November 2020. So the initial vision was one .NET. We've got these 3 .NETs right now: .NET Framework, .NET Core, Mono, and Xamarin. Right? They're pretty much the same framework. One's built on top of the other. Well, we wanted to deliver just .NET, a single SDK, one base class library, a unified toolchain. You don't have to go and learn all the specific nitty-gritty things between the various .NETs. A cross-platform native user interface library, a cross-platform web user interface library, some cloud-native investments so that you can build for the cloud, take advantage of all the great things for scaling and orchestration out there on the cloud, and have continued investments in performance, diagnostics, integration with the Blue Cloud, the Microsoft Cloud. And .NET, right? We want it to be the best of breed solution for all modern workloads. But what does that actually mean? What did we actually land for .NET 5? Well, we had .NET Framework 4.8. No more features right now. Only fixes. That's the version that ships with Windows. You're always going to see that .NET Framework 4.8 version be versioned as needed with Windows. That also means that when there's a new version of Windows, the support cycle for .NET Framework 4.8 resets. So I think we're currently seeing with paid support that support is going to be available through 2029 for .NET Framework 4.8. So we're in great shape there. It has the features it needs to support Windows. .NET Core 3.1, we wanted to move forward and we wanted to deliver what was going to be .NET Core 4, but that's a little confusing. And Mono and Xamarin, we wanted to merge those in with .NET Core 4 so that we had one framework that would allow you to build mobile. You could build desktop with .NET Core and web and be able to move forward with that one framework. Well, .NET Core 4, for the purposes of search engine optimization to help folks be able to discover and find where it was going to be really confusing to have .NET Core 4 and .NET Framework 4. So the idea was, well, we'll just drop the term core and we'll move into calling it .NET 5. This is where I play the Highlander sound effect. There can be only one. And we have .NET 5. Now, that means we need to get into .NET 6 is next. And of course, along the way, pandemic and other things happened, and we ended up saying we really should push out that Mono and Xamarin integration to next year. There's a lot happening there. There's a lot of groundwork we've got to put in place. So it's been pushed out to the next version of .NET 6 next year. Now, this actually leads to a couple of very good things for us then. It gives us a lot of runway to make sure we get it right. It also means that we can unify and pull together what we need between some of the Mono framework, particularly in the browser, and some of those other things that were left from .NET Framework that we wanted to get into .NET Core to deliver a .NET 5 experience. So what's not in .NET 5? Of course, app domains, remoting, web forms, WCF server, and Windows workflow, those only stay in .NET Framework. There's no plans to port those. So there are some replacements. There are some recommendations that we do make if you want to continue using those tools or something like those tools going forward. Instead of app domains, you use assembly load context. Instead of using remoting, that's a very Windows thing to use, you're going to use named pipes with gRPC. Instead of web forms, we recommend you check out ASP.NET Blazor. And of course, if you've been following any of the work that I've been doing, there is a Blazor Web Forms components package that's available out there that creates some components that look and feel like the Web Forms controls. That's community-owned, community-driven, and still in development, but there's a lot of great features there that'll get your Web Forms application migrated. You'll be able to reuse your user interface easily. Instead of WCF Server, we recommend you check out gRPC, and there's also a core WCF project that's available out there that a couple of the folks from the WCF team are actually working on, but they don't recommend you use it for production use just yet. And in Windows Workflow, there is the core WF project available at github.com/UiPath/core-WF. The mic is a little muffled on your connection. Let me see if we can turn that back. How's that? Am I peaking a little? Is that what's going on here? Let me know. Sounds good. All righty.
Much better.
Fantastic. So we simplified the framework names in .NET 5. There was this concept of runtime identifiers, right? And you had Net Core App 3.1, right? There is no more Net Core. It's just Net. So to have net app, that sounds silly. So let's shorten that, get rid of the app, get rid of the core, and call it just NET5. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. And when we were setting up these names, we knew we weren't going to have .NET Standard because there was only going to be .NET 5. So drop .NET Standard because there is only .NET 5, and we end up with just NET5. And with the runtime identifiers that we used to have of Windows and Mac and Linux and Android and iOS, the idea was, well, we'll get rid of the concept of runtime identifiers, and we'll just have the target framework of NET5 -Windows when we're building Windows apps, things like Windows Forms and WPF applications. That works when we were considering that we would have a NET5 -Android and a NET5 -iOS, because you're building some things that are very operating system specific when we think about the mobile devices. But they got pushed back. So now we're going to, in the future, have NET6 Android and NET6 iOS. Makes sense, but really what we're hearing is we're simplifying down to 2 target frameworks, NET5, NET5 Windows. No more .NET Standard that you're going to be needing to target. It's still out there, you could still use it, but for the purposes of building with .NET 5, don't need it. So the concept is, going forward, we're going to have NET_X.Y, where it's going to be X.Y Windows, Android, iOS, or some other operating system that's different that we need to support. Different and stuff that's operating system specific, whether it's Mac, not even Mac or Linux in there, right? So we're pretty confident in this approach. We still have .NET Core App 3.1, .NET Standard 2.1 are out there. They're going to continue to be supported because they are, well, they're a current release. .NET Core App 3.1 is a current release. I'm sorry, .NET Core 3.1 is a long-term servicing release. That'll be around for a few more years still. Now, Microsoft, when we build for .NET 5, we'll be building cross-platform libraries like ASP.NET Core, Entity Framework, all the system packages, and most libraries, they're going to target NET5. The Windows controls, Windows Forms, WPF, and the managed UWP controls go to NET5 Windows. The cross-platform abstractions like Xamarin Essentials, Xamarin Forms, .NET MAUI, or those other cross-platform abstractions, even stuff for Blazor, will target NET5 and other operating system specific frameworks as needed for some of those libraries and things that need to target those specifically. But things that need to also target .NET Framework, so this is the Azure SDK, Microsoft SQL Client, the things that .NET Framework still needs to be able to access, and we want to continue upgrading those libraries that are going to continue to upgrade. We're going to support .NET Standard 2.0. .NET Standard 2.0 is that contract definition that specifies a set of APIs across different .NET frameworks. And .NET Standard 2.0 is the last version, the highest version number that still supports .NET Framework. So you'll have great support to use these libraries in .NET 5, Xamarin, and .NET Framework. So that's a recommendation we have for folks going forward as well. All right, now what should you target as you're building applications? Well, if you want to share code with .NET Framework, target .NET Standard 2.0 with your class libraries. It's a good, safe framework. You only really need to go outside of it if you're building something specific to .NET Core 3-point-something, Mono, Xamarin, then you need to look at a different version. .NET Standard 2.1 only if you're going between Mono, Xamarin, and .NET Core 3-point-something. But use .NET 5 for all of your code sharing moving forward. It's going to be the version to use, and you're going to start to see benefits from consolidating down to that one signature, that one capability, that one framework. Consequently, now that we've completed that vision of here's how we're going to .NET 5, Visual Studio 2019 16.8 is in general availability, and there's now a 16.9 in preview. I think I got preview 2 the other day. Right, if I open up my preview app here, my installer app, I always install the preview versions of Visual Studio. So if I bring this, let me bring this forward here because I can do that. 16.9 preview 2 is available out there. Let me do this. I can turn off my fancy zones because I'm on these smaller settings here. Let me just change that real quick. It's this is a Windows Power Toy thing that if you have a larger monitor, Power Toys is so invaluable, especially fancy zones. So 16.9 preview 2 is now available. I always use the previews. They're typically very safe for you to use, but you can always install these side by side, not just the preview. You can install 2017 is out there, and 2019 16.8.3 is available as well. You can have those all installed side by side on your machine. You don't have to be like, gosh, back in the day, were you like me? And there was one point that I had Visual Studio 2017, 2015, 2013, 2012, 2010, and no, I didn't have 2008. So it was one thing because I supported products on Visual Studio that had that many. That I needed that type of backward compatibility. But I knew folks who were like consultants that had all of those Visual Studios around, or they would start up virtual machines that had the appropriate Visual Studio version on that virtual machine. Oh my goodness. It's so nice with Visual Studio 2019 to have these side by side now. So when you install the new Visual Studio, .NET 5 is included in the box. You're going to get productivity enhancements, IntelliCode team completions. There's an improved Git experience, Linux debugging, an improved XAML experience, and GitHub Actions in Visual Studio. You can publish. When you right-click Publish an application now, it doesn't just upload your content and place it on some website. No, we'll generate a GitHub action and optionally save it for you so that it will deploy appropriately. That's really cool. visualstudio.com/download, or you can get the preview version at aka.ms/vs-preview. All right. Moving on, Windows desktop apps on .NET 5. We've completed the development experience. You had to do this weird back and forth hosting and sharing design files between .NET Framework and .NET Core frameworks. Right, 2 different projects, and you would share the output from the one into the other so that you could get to the designer using the old .NET Framework project. Don't need to do that anymore. We've finished the designer. It's available. All the Visual Studio tooling is there, so you can design and work with Windows Forms in WPF in Visual Studio. Click Once is back. There's support for a Click Once installer. All the third-party tools and controls work now with Windows Forms on .NET 5. So .NET 3.1, we already had some capabilities to improve and have self-contained single file exe. All of those are built into the user interface now. Self-contained single filed exes. No need for .NET Framework at all on the machine to develop, to build Windows desktop apps, that is. Even the development SDK versions of .NET Framework, right? We called it the development pack. Don't need that anymore to build with .NET Framework and to build with Windows Forms, WPF, and .NET 5. Performance is significantly improved because we toss out all the references to things you don't need in your desktop app. Things like ASP.NET, things like XML and JSON if you don't need it. Toss those out, don't need it. And you're going to get access to modern controls like the WebView 2, right? You get access to be able to use the new Edge browser component inside of your WPF and Windows Forms applications. Full stack .NET web apps are possible with Blazor and .NET 5. I've got a section a little bit later about going deeper on Blazor, but Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, are fully supported now as part of .NET 5. No longer, right, Blazor WebAssembly we released at Build back in, what was it, May? I can't remember. All of these conferences merged together in my head here. And that was labeled 3.2. That was labeled current release. So if you want to continue to maintain compatibility, you want to maintain support, you need to upgrade to .NET 5. And I will tell you that in the applications I've upgraded from Blazor WebAssembly 3.2 to .NET 5, I haven't had any challenges. I've just gone into my project file, changed the version number, recompile, restore, and everything works. So take it to .NET 5, take it to the .NET 5 versions of the references, and for me, everything worked. Your mileage may vary, but it's going to come pretty close. You're going to do pretty well with it. So Blazor WebAssembly now uses .NET 5 core framework libraries instead of Mono. So you're going to see the exact same libraries in both places, both whether you're running on the server or you're running in the browser. You're going to see 3 times the speed of the previous release. That's crazy. 3 times the speed of the previous release. Server-side pre-rendering of your WebAssembly application, which is just amazing to see. Have ASP.NET Core kick in on the server, pre-render the HTML for that content, serve it, and let the WebAssembly take over after it's been delivered. It's really nice to see that output caching helps with that significantly. Lazy loading dependencies makes your Blazor application appear faster. Component virtualization, we've all seen on websites like Twitter and Facebook and the like, you have the infinite scroll that happens. There's now a tag that will allow you to do that inside of your components in Blazor. CSS and JavaScript isolation, if you're building components for Blazor, you can now create files that are the same name of the component, .css or .js, and those components, those static files, will only be included when your component is referenced on page. There's a couple new components there, including the input radio button that are available for you to work with, and there's a huge, huge ecosystem of third-party and open source controls and tools that just continues to grow. There's a lot of excitement in the Blazor community. There's a lot of excitement in the Blazor community, and people really are enjoying using this brand new user interface framework that we've made available for the web. So let's talk about C# 9, the new version of my favorite programming language. And I've got a bunch of interactive demos that I've already put together. I've shared some of these on my channel. I'd like to share them with you, get your questions as we walk through and take a look at some of the new features in the new programming language that is now available with .NET 5 and the .NET 5 SDK. Let me pivot over here. I see a question from Mark. Mark asks, so you're saying that with .NET 5, I can easily build an app that doesn't run on a web server because it is the web server? Oh, yes, absolutely. With .NET Core and now .NET 5, your console application builds, with .NET Core and now .NET 5, when you build a web application, it's always been a console application first and foremost, and it bootstraps and starts the web server. So when you look at the syntax for a new application, it actually creates the web host that we call Kestrel. Kestrel's our .NET hosted web server, our managed web server, and you can publish that command line app that starts Kestrel and loads your ASP.NET application. You can publish that wherever you'd like. You can. I have a friend that deploys a Twitch chatbot. She deploys it as a console application that happens to have web browser interactivity. Really cool stuff, and that's absolutely available for you to interact with. If you want, I can show a demo of that. Let me know there in the chat. Tim chimes in, hats for days. You're right. If we show in C# features, I should change hats. You're right, Tim. Thank you for reminding. Really appreciate it, Tim. All right, that's the hat for C#. Let's go talk about C# 9 features. So I've already got a project loaded up here, and it's on the wrong screen, and it's really big because I changed font size here. Pardon me. Let me change font size again. Font. I'm searching for font. That's not font. Font. Thank you. Pardon me for a second here. Let's reset the font size. That's better, so we can see a little bit more of what's going on the screen. And I had, oh good, that did open properly. Fantastic. I'm gonna move chat over here so I can see my notes. No, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Where did my notes go? Fine. I'll have to navigate back to it. There it is. All right. There are 5 main features of C# 9 that I want to talk about, that I want to go through and share with you. And I'm already jumped through to some of these. So here they are: records, init-only setters, top-level programs, pattern matching, and target-typed new expressions. That last one is almost it's a bit of syntactic sugar, right? It's like eye candy for us as developers. So the first one that I want to talk about is records, right? So records are a new top-level object that we can define, right? We've already had things like interfaces and enums, and of course classes and structs. Well, now we're going to be able to define objects of type record. And when we look at records, we have things that look like, well, we have classes that, right, typical person class, first name, last name. You have some sort of a toString override in here that returns that syntax put together. You might have a constructor here that just initializes the first name and last name with whatever's been passed in, right? You can define a record similarly with the keyword record. I've got 2 properties here, and they have a private setter, and I've declared a constructor here that will initialize, and it looks identical there. So it looks and feels the same. But when we think about records, records have a couple of things that are a little bit different from classes. Records are immutable. You cannot change a record. Once one's been defined, it's out there. You can't overwrite it. You can't change the properties of it. We can initialize the values, and it will also generate get hash code, as well as methods for value-based equality comparisons. It's real easy for you to compare 2 records to each other and inspect and know whether they're truly equal or not. So I have class and a person. They're pretty similar here. I just have a little bit of code that's going to create a person record, and I'm going to create another person record, and I'm going to see if they're truly equal, even though they have, right, they're clearly 2 different values here, but are they equal? So let me just run that real quick, and we'll see when this runs. See, what I should do is have this running in the background and ready to go for us. So here's the sample console, and it says true. They're not the same object, but they've got the exact same values being set, right? The record is doing a value comparison. Are all the properties the same? Are they equal? Yes. Okay. So I get a true value being returned from there. Now, if I have a person class, if I use the person class and I want to look at and interact with that, I'm getting the exact same thing here, and I can change their last name. So let me change this. Let's do this. New person class, right? And if I change the last name here, right, I can do that no problem, right? I'm used to being able to change that. But if I delete this, right, so I'm working with the person record, it tells me the property can only be assigned to its read-only, right? It's immutable. It's a read-only object that I can work with. So now you're going to ask me, well, Jeff, you made it a read-only property. Of course it is. Okay, you're not wrong. So let me show you demo 2 here. Because classes are also they're not value objects, they're reference objects. So in the second demo that I have written, we can inherit and we can simplify our record syntax, because that old record syntax, I didn't see any value that was really delivered when I write a record. It looked exactly the same as a class, except you had the funny record keyword. Well, I'm going to define, instead of a person, I'm going to define a cool person that has a first name and a last name, and I don't have to give it any other syntax, because first name and last name are listed here inside of what looks like the constructor. I have a cool person defined, and it has a property called first name and a property called last name. So let me comment Freddy Mercury out here, and let me uncomment. So if I have cool person here, and I can just do a straight right line of that, it's going to generate a toString for me, and I'll be able to interact with that. And what it generates, it put it on the wrong screen, I'm sorry, is it generates the text cool person, and it puts inside of curly braces here, first name, last name. So I get something that actually is valuable to me, unlike the old toString method that would just output, right, the name, the class name on a class. Well, now with a record, I can work with that every day of the weekend, twice on Sunday, because to my human eyes, that makes sense, where the old toString made sense for a machine. Okay, now we're talking. Now we're getting somewhere, but it supports inheritance. So if I also define a rock star that has first name, last name, and also has a band name property, I can specify that that inherits from a cool person and pass these properties along into the cool person object. And now I have a record that's called Rockstar that is also a cool person. So, right, let me comment out Jeff here, and let me bring Freddy back in here. So I define Freddy Mercury, Queen. Look at how old I am, referring to Queen. At least I'm not referring to Mick Jagger here, right? That'd be a little bit older. So I can write out that Rockstar R, and I can also cast that Rockstar to a cool person and write it out as well. So I'll run that, and now you see, even though I cast it as a cool person, I still get that it's a Rockstar in both instances. I get that inheritance. It is, right, Freddie Mercury is a cool person, but I am also getting the full definition of, well, this is the object that's being output, that's being consumed there, okay? So that's interesting. That gets me some nice features, but you got to show me a little bit more here, Fritz. That's child's play. So what? Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the third demo, where we can do deconstruction and cloning of our records. Now, what does that mean? Deconstruction and cloning. So let's say we have a cool person. I know that guy. We can deconstruct those properties, because those positional properties, we can deconstruct them and put them into a value tuple like this. So I'm going to receive a value tuple that's first, last from that cool person record, and I'll be able to interact with it. I'm just going to write them out here. And I can clone that record, because I can't change it, right? I can't take that record and say p.firstname equals Sam, right? You can see it's already giving me a red underscore here. This is only a init property or indexer. You can't go and change the content of that. But what I can do is I can clone that object, P, with, and at that point, assign new properties. In this case, I can change the first name. So if I run my demo now, you'll see that the record gives me the ability. So I wrote out first, last, and I got Jeff and Fritz there, and I created S as a clone of my P object here. So here's my first one, right? S is Scott Fritz, and then the other one is still there, hasn't been modified, and there's Jeff Fritz. So I have this very clean way to clone record objects. It's immutable, so I'll never have any issues with data changing from under me while I'm referencing the same object. It's a reference object, so I can pass it around. I can inherit from it just like I would a class, and you can even pass it around and use model binding inside of things like ASP.NET Core, Blazor, WinForms, WPF. They all work for you. ReSharper doesn't play nicely with records yet. Projects still build and work fine, but you end up seeing a bunch of red in the text because they aren't used to records yet. Good to know. Thanks for sharing that, Tim. Appreciate it. So those are records, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg with this. It's first version that has records. Check them out. They're gonna help your code be a little bit leaner when you're writing and interacting with just those POCO type classes that you need to pass between different environments. So, and certainly being able to write a class as a record with this syntax, that's like eye candy to me. That's really great stuff. I'm really happy seeing that, and I want to work with that more in my code. Very concise, very clear to see exactly what that record is representing. Now, it mentioned init only capabilities, so let's take a look at init only. Init only setters. So let me know if you've had this problem. You have properties or fields you have properties inside of a class, and you want to be able to define the values for those, but you don't want to create you want to make them read only, but you don't want to create a constructor that has all the fields in them that you want to initialize. You'd really like to be able to use that new syntax with the curly braces so you can specify all the values when you initialize and create that class. So that's what's going on with this, with the init only setters. So take a look here. I'm going to create a new log entry object. I've defined it down here. I've actually defined this as a struct. It'll work for classes as well. But instead of having get set, I've specified get init. So what init says here, instead of set, says that it can be set, but it can only be set in either the constructor or in an initializer like this syntax here. All right. So I'm initializing the severity, the log, timestamp, the description, instead of having a constructor that has these three values defined and being able to map between them. You can do that. Nothing says you can't, but this gives you a little bit more flexibility about when you want to allow those values to be set. And I just put together a little toString here so that we can see that it writes these out properly and it initializes them appropriately. 12/15/2020 error, bad dates. And if I change one of these to private set, right? Of course, I'm going to get on the log timestamp here, right? You're not allowed to set this outside of here because it's private to being set inside the struct. Similarly, if I get rid of that and make it read only, I'm going to get the same error here, right? Of it's read only. So to get that initialization capability, we now have init, and that'll go away, right? A struct, you have to initialize all these things before you can use it, and this syntax makes it a lot cleaner, a lot easier to work with. Hey, is that Dennis? Dennis asks, are records allocated on the stack or the heap? Records are allocated on the heap. They're reference objects. They behave very much like classes. where structs or value types, you'll see them on the stack. The records you'll find on the heap, they get reclaimed in the same way as classes, and hopefully you won't have to go through many GC cycles for them to reclaim objects. Since they're smaller, they're immutable, and the compiler knows, the garbage collector knows, they won't be changed sometime later. So as soon as they're dereferenced, it can go and reclaim them. So they know they won't be changed. All right. Next thing I want to talk about are top-level programs. Did I just hear a beep? No, that wasn't me. Okay. Top-level programs are a way for you to write applications without having to do all this. Namespace, class, static void main, arguments, all that nonsense. I can get rid of this. And I can have my own class over here, right? If I go over here, you can only have one top level at a time in here. I'll just get rid of that. So now I can write an application that's really using systems, so I can get into console write line. I can write out some other data. These are the arguments passed in, and I'll receive arguments. You just have to, you can reference args. It knows what args are inside of a bare file like this. And I'll execute records.demo3. Where's demo3? Where's that? That's back over here, and I'll write these values out. I'm reaching back into that other class, and I'll be able to write those values out. And the idea here being, right, there you go, this is a top-level program. These are the arguments passed in, and I actually wrote some arguments into the debug statements for this. Here, is that where I put it? Debug. And I thought I had application arguments there for debug. I guess we didn't. Why didn't I see that? I should have seen that. Let me look at that one more time. Where'd it go? Properties, debug, project. These are the arguments passed in. Why aren't they there? I could have sworn they were there. I'm not sure where they're coming in from. Who knew? But there's oh no, I'm sorry, there were no arguments passed in. But this is the demo3 code. Okay. That was right. That was behaving properly. Let me go back over here. Let's go back into properties, arguments, foo, and bar. Right? Isn't that the age-old demo that we do here? There we go. Foo, comma, comma, bar. All right. So they should have been space separated. There we go. Foo and bar were passed in. So to each their own, but writing these top level programs like this, think about it. You can write a top level program that actually starts up the web server and listens and has a little piece of middleware to interact with some data and return content. You can write that in 2 dozen lines of code right here. No need to write all the ceremony of building an application, building an ASP.NET application. And if you're writing a little class file like that, not even a class file, if you're writing a little file like that that has just that little bit of code, to put that into a Docker container that has all of the ASP.NET runtime, it's going to be so simple, so easy to manage, and changing and enhancing that one little API, it's going to be really easy to do. It's going to be really cool to do, or building a Windows service in the same way, starting up just a little bit of code and having it registered as a Windows service. You can write that in 2 dozen lines of code easy using a format like this, or you can test things out using this type of syntax. It's great stuff. Let me know what you experiment with and find as you work through building top level programs. All right, let me comment all of that out because I want to go back and continue going through the demo this way. Rats. I uncommented too much. There we go. Pattern matching. You may have seen pattern matching in previous versions of C#. There's been new features that have been added again and again and again. And as we look at it, right, we know that pattern matching matches the shape of an object. So if we say object data is 1.1, we can say, well, is that an integer, and attempt to stuff it into a variable called I. Well, if data is an integer, we'll write this line. Else if, and write this is data type and some variable is trying to stuff that version into it. This is the pattern matching. You can also do it with switch case statements, right? And there's a switch here, switch on some data. Well, if it's the value 0, write out 0. If it's a float, we'll put it into D and we can do something with it down here. If it's an integer, and we can even further qualify it using a when clause, right? We've had this before. And we had patterns that we could do with switch statements. These weren't switch statements. They're switch assignments. I forget what they call these. Right. So you're actually saying, well, take the V value and switch on it and see if it matches one of these patterns. Right. Does the wheels property of the truck equal 2? Then 0.25. Switch expressions. Thank you, Todd. Is the wheels property 4? Well, then 50 cents is the toll, right? Is it a truck and the total weight is less than 10,000? Well, the toll is 1. If it's none of those, the toll is $2. Okay. We can do further pattern matching with rock, paper, scissors, right? And match on the content of a value tuple here, right? So we're going to take first and second, and we're going to switch and see if it matches these. I mean, as a switch statement here, dear Lord, to write that as an if then else is just, it's a mess. But this is so easy, so quick, and it's very functional in nature, and it's very clear exactly what's going on in these scenarios. So really like seeing that. But now in C#9, those were all features that you had previously. You can do them in C#8 and earlier. All the versions of C# you can use, not all the versions. The C#8 and earlier, you can do all of those things in going back to, I think it's 7.2. But with C#9, now we have a simpler pattern that we can use. Right, where before up here we calculated the toll like this. Here, let me collapse this. Right, vehicle V equals new car. I would say V switch, and I'm right. It's the same here. What did I do differently here? Why don't I have my notes? Aren't over here. Where did they go? Well, you had that capability. Where is it? The relational pattern. There was, I thought it was, we did truck T. You no longer have to do that, specify exactly what's receiving it, the name, right? The value, the variable name that's going to receive it. You can just say truck instead of truck T, and it'll receive and interact with that. If you do need to receive and you need to work with the truck object, you can still receive it into a variable, but you don't need to. You can just test against the type. There are also some relational patterns that you can use here. So, right, instead of saying wheels and testing against an exact value, well, now I can say, well, go get the total weight, and I can do these comparisons to get the value, and if it is true in each of these, then it'll set the value appropriately in the return. There's also logical patterns. You can use the logical terms like and or in the middle of these tests, inside of your switch or your if, and you can appropriately test to make these very rich switch expressions that you want to use in C#9. So that's going to make it even easier to use pattern matching inside of your applications. Now, last feature that I want to talk about is the target typed new expressions. So let me change this. So I have a object here called new target. New target is the name of this class. And I'm going to create a new one of those and call demo1. So I'm going to have a list of integers. Well, because I defined the type of this list of type integer, I don't need to re-specify it a second time over here, right? I don't need to do that. But if I define it over here, I don't need to put the type over there. I can call it var. And because the type is over here, no big deal. But this feels like putting, right? I'm telling it, well, you're going to figure out what this is based on what's on the right. But there's certainly a C# thing feeling where I want to tell you what the type is first, the variable that's going to receive it. And at that point, just give me a new one of those. And this feels a little bit more like C# would intend, because I just want a new instance of whatever that thing is, right? Because I want to declare my type first. So this really is, in my opinion, as somebody who prefers the var keyword, this feels like I'm righting the ship. And I want to get used to going back to declaring my types first and using the new keyword at the end. So you end up then with repeated object initializers as well. So if I've got an array here of points, well, there's a default constructor for a point that is my X and Y coordinates. So instead of saying new point on each one of these, right? And that's a valid constructor for the point object, X and Y. I don't need to do that because it already knows what the type of the array is. I can just say new with the appropriate constructor signature for the point. Okay, I'm starting to see this here. This is a thing, and I can also do a new when I've got a method here. Count elements in list, right? I've defined a method here with a list of type myList. Well, I know that the input parameter of this is a list of type myList. So I don't even have to specify new list of type int. I can just do new and let it interpret and figure out what the type is that's going to be instantiated, and I'll pass in my arguments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it'll return that count. It's all about simplifying the amount of code that you need to write, because we can infer it from how it's being used, where it's being placed, and output appropriately. All right, 7:30. How we doing? What time's? Who's playing tonight? Is this
Mighty Cleveland Browns and the not so hot, mediocre Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, I know that's a brawl. Oh my goodness. I can wrap up in a half an hour if you'd like. Not the Lions. That's right. So
you got time. We typically go till 8:30, or
okay.
We're scheduled 8:30, but it's completely up to you.
I can go. I've gone for 12 hours. I went for 12 hours a week and a half ago. So don't tempt me.
Gotcha.
All right. Let's start here. So .NET 5, that was everything I want to talk about with C#9. .NET 5 was made available. It was released for Azure App Service. It is available today, and .NET releases going forward will be available on day 1 on Azure App Service. That's a commitment that the Azure team has made to us, and we're holding them to it. So you can use .NET 5 on Azure on App Service, and it is being rolled out. There is a new version coming for Azure Functions that's being tested and going to be available very soon as well. So the next thing, let me go back to Blazor. Blazor is clearly and easily my favorite of the .NET frameworks. So much to see and learn and to accomplish using what's now, I feel like, the .NET single page application framework, the .NET SPA. I can build and do so much on the web, all in C#, and that makes me very happy. So the themes for Blazor, as we look at .NET 5, were to improve the developer experience, improve the performance in WebAssembly. We want to make sure that we deliver smaller binaries and it runs faster in the browser. That was one of the biggest knocks on Blazor is, well, is it as fast as Angular? Oh, it's brand new. It's not going to be as fast as the king of the hill frameworks, Angular, Vue, and React, right out of the gate here. Right? It's running on a whole different runtime. We're getting there. And we improved the performance in .NET 5, and we had a number of feature gaps that we wanted to take care of and make sure that we improved for you as developers in the browser. So what's new for Blazor in .NET 5? CSS isolation. I mentioned this. You can define controls, define components with a .css file living next to it with the exact same name, and that'll be conditionally included. Auto refresh of your Blazor client. This is pretty big. You run .NET Watch run on your Blazor WebAssembly applications, and it will automatically refresh as there are changes in your browser. No need for Visual Studio to run that. Everybody gets that right on the command line. Packages can auto add their own CSS and JavaScript. That kind of comes along with the CSS isolation. Better debugging experience with whether it's the browser or it's Visual Studio. Input file support. You can upload files using a Blazor front end. Virtualization, I mentioned that's now available. And the big one that I want to show you and show the auto refresh, Azure Static Web Apps integration. So let me go open Visual Studio, and I'm going to jump over to a static website that I've built. And you're not going to believe what it's called. You're honestly, you're never going to. Oh, where is it? Are you kidding? I thought I had it here. It had to be here. It was here. Hang on. It can't be right. Because I don't see it. It's not that one. Hang on. Where'd it go? It was, no. I don't. What the heck? It's not here. I'm gonna have to bring it back down. And now I'm sad. Yep, it's not here. Fine. We'll clone this down from GitHub real quick. So what I wanted to show you, and then we're gonna have to go get from the hub of all things Git. No, it's not that. Is are you kidding me? Oh, the Fritz Hat Collection website. Oh yes, my hats have their own website. It's true. I wouldn't make this up. Git clone that. So this is an Azure static website. I can't believe I deleted this. I feel so bad now. There we go. So this was built as a Blazor single page application. I don't know why Task Runner Explorer opened there. By default, this template comes with 3 projects. A shared project that has the objects that you're going to share between your API, your server-side API, and your client, the things that you're going to paint on the screen. So the things that I'm going to have both on the server and inside my browser, well, I'm going to put hats in both places. So I've got a hat object here that has a tag. I'm going to tag all of my hats, a name for my hat and a description. So I've got a very simple hat object here. And I'm storing it in FaunaDB. That's what these fauna indications are, these fauna attributes that you see. So it knows how to serialize and deserialize it. My server is not an ASP.NET Core web server running on .NET 5. No. It's Azure Functions. This is an Azure static web app. So it's running a series of functions like get hats. And it'll go out to my repository, my data repository that's living in this case, FaunaDB, go get my collection of hats and return that whenever it's requested, painted on the screen. So that's not too bad. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how Fauna works, but those hat objects that are being returned, and I'm just returning that collection of hat objects, are being parsed by a Blazor app. This is all WebAssembly. This runs and sits inside of an index HTML that's Fritz's hat collection, and it has some links to me and CSS files, and it's a simple application. It's not doing anything in the HTML. It ships all the content to you, and when this is initialized, go get from JSON async, from the API, my collection of hats, or do search. Go get it from that endpoint and pass in my search criteria to paint on the screen. Now, I have a hat UI object that I created here also. Rats, it's not going to jump into it for me. And it's a card that we're going to put on the screen. It has all kinds of information about the name of the hat, when I acquired the hat. Yes, all of my hats have descriptions. And I've got images for all these things loaded. So I'm not lying to you. My hats have their own website. It's true. If you go to hats.c#fritz.com, this is a Blazor web application. It's running statically. Nothing's being nothing's being executed on the website after this has been passed down to you. It did the query, it returned the hats, and you can mouse over these and you can see a little bit of information about each one of the hats. And I'll share that link into chat just in case you want to go there and tinker around. But to me, this is an easy way to build a very simple application that, you know what, I don't need to think too much about this content. I'm going to load this hat information. It's stored in a database, in a Fauna database. These images are stored in a blob, in Azure Blob Storage, and they're being served as I mouse over them, right? You can see as I scroll down that it was, as they were coming on screen, it was loading the images up. So I wasn't hitting that request as they were being presented. That's something that I wrote into, where is it? I wrote into, is it index? Where did I write that? Where it only loads them as they're being prompted, as they're being loaded. There we go. Loading equals lazy. So only when that image is in the viewport does it actually request and load the image. And the image is coming out of hat collection, blob, core, windows.net. We've seen this. This is an Azure storage, and I've stored it with the same file name as the tag that I have for each one of these hats. So Captain America's shield. Yes, this is only 50 of my hats. I have a little bit of a problem. But you can do things here like, right, I can search for Penn, and it'll show me my 2 Penn State hats. I'm a Penn State graduate. Reset, and it goes back. And this is all, right, this is Blazor sitting here, bouncing off of an Azure function and loading up this content. So there's a template that this is based off of that isn't, it's a solution template. And we don't have such things as solution templates inside of Visual Studio. So what I did was I cloned a GitHub repository and modified it, forked it so that it had branding and things appropriate for Fritz's hats, and made this now possible on the website. If I head over to GitHub and show you this repository, this is all sitting in GitHub. I'll share the link. This is open source. You're welcome to come check this out. All of my code is here. I didn't even change the README. It's the Blazor starter application. The template is not the GitHub template. The original template that this came from is, I didn't fork it, so I actually copied it. I don't see it. Nope, that wasn't it. Nope, that wasn't it. Think. Where did we get that? Blazor spa template. No. Blazor static template. That's what I'm thinking. There we go. There's a link here in the tutorial to the actual GitHub account to get it from. Fallback route, create repository. There it is. Static web dev, Blazor starter. This one. So here's the template. This is only a template repository, and it's got those 3 projects in it, a solution file, and away you go. So you can create a new project based off of this and work with it at that point. I stopped sharing. Oh no, I stopped sharing. I'm sorry. Let me reshare my screen. And now I feel shame. There we go. I think that, right? That's the starter template repository that has the 3 projects in it to start with, and I have my version of that. After you work through and you tinker and you get this running, you go out to Azure, and there's instructions inside of. Here we go. Yeah, there's instructions at the bottom of the template there for how to configure this on Azure. It is, I couldn't believe how easy it was to do. And then there's some really cool things it does for you when you build with this. So go out to the Azure portal. You want to build a new static web app. It prompts you for a subscription, resource group, the details of what do you want to name the app, what region do you want it to live in. They're all free for right now because they're still building out this. It's in preview. You sign in with GitHub, and it will prompt you for which organization, in my case, C# Fritz, which repository, Fritz Hat Collection, and then the branch you want it to publish. It'll generate a GitHub action for you. Azure Portal generates a GitHub action for you and creates the resource. It allocates the app service for you on Azure. Then that action that it creates for you, this is really clever, check this out, will, on pushes to main and when pull requests are created, more on that in a second, it will build and deploy your application. Okay. And it has your Azure tokens here, your GitHub token appropriately. After it builds and deploys the application, it'll go and deploy from the client, from the API, and all the static content that's in dub root. So things like your CSS, any JavaScript that you've included, any fonts. You don't need JavaScript. You've got Blazor. This is nothing. We don't use that anymore. Shoo, go away, JavaScript. We have C#. We like C#. So it'll deploy all that stuff for you. But if you create a pull request, it'll create a staging slot of your application so that you can see the content in there and test it out. Check this out. Let me show you this. Let me go in here. Let's create let me do a quick change to something here. I'm going to click into root. Just for the sake of showing you something here, I'm going to click into index. I'm just going to change the title here. I'm going to click to edit this file. And here, Fritz's Hat Collection. I'm going to change this to the Cleveland.net Hat Collection, okay? And I'm not going to commit this to the main branch. I'm going to create a new branch and start a pull request. So I'm going to propose those changes. So it's not been merged in. I'm creating a pull request, updating index.html for Cleveland. All right. Create that pull request, and now I have a pull request. check this out. I'm going to go over to my actions. It's running the build script for this. And we'll see it download, compile my application, and it's going to deploy this into a staging slot for us that we're going to be able to go out to and tinker with and see that it works properly or not. So this does something really cool for us then. This means that all of our pull requests, as they're submitted, we can work with, we can tinker and explore and make sure that they don't break things automatically. Now, there's things that you're going to want to set up appropriately around configuration, so that any configuration that you need for read access to data, sure, bring that down into your deployment slots. Those are allowed to be copied in as deployment slot settings. But you need to be careful that somebody doesn't create a pull request here and expose information about your application, right? They don't publish all of your any sensitive data, right? Because when folks create a pull request, this gets generated and it's going to publish the link inside my repository. So while extremely handy to be able to explore and make sure that you didn't break anything, that things still work, you want to make sure that it doesn't work with those same production resources that are being used in the production space. So this is, look at this, it's doing the build right now of my Blazor app. The Blazor app is built, I built this with .NET 3.1. You can build it with .NET 5 if you'd like. The Azure Functions right now still need to be built with .NET 3.1, but your Blazor content can be built with .NET 5. Look at that. Finished upload, it's uploaded it to Azure, and it's checking to see, are you done deploying yet? Is my staging slot up there and active? And we should see here in just a second, it should be pulling a lot faster. There we go. So, still in progress. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies. Come on. And this usually takes at most 3 minutes. There we go. Deployment complete. So it has this really weird URL, which is actually the same base name for the URL. Where'd it go? Back up here and build and deploy, right? There it is. Visit your site at Salmon Pond and some weird number here, -5. That -5 is the pull request ID number. And I can click through to that and I get the exact same website with my changes now deployed out on Azure. But check that out. The name of the title, Cleveland.NET Hat Collection. Done. Built, it works, it deployed. I can immediately see that my change is there, verified, and I can merge or reject the pull request appropriately. And right, as somebody who's building these things on a somewhat regular basis, that makes me feel good. Notice there's another action here. This is going to get crushed. This is going to get this pull request, that staging slot, it's going to destroy when I close this pull request. So if I merge it, it'll merge, it'll put it into the main area, and it'll deploy to the other staging slot, to the live website, right? It doesn't do a swap. It'll deploy after the merge is complete. But if I just close this without merging, it will go through and we'll see, and yes, delete the branch. We'll see inside of our actions over here, pull request was closed, and it's going to go through and actually, here it is, close pull request job. It's actually going to go and delete that staging slot for me. Yeah, Lindsay, I think it is pretty neat. There's a lot of possibilities here, but you do need to be careful with sensitive information that folks may be sending. If anybody is sending in a pull request, right? Somebody could put through a pull request that publishes your connection string information, stuff like that. So be aware that there is that possibility, because it just blindly starts updating and publishes those things. So that's one of the reasons this is in preview. So There it is. So closed out the pull request. If I scroll down here, you'll see Docker run, and it ends up clobbering it. It ends up deleting it so that it's no longer out there. And thank you for using Azure Static Web Apps. So really cool. All the features of Blazor, they run faster. They're running out there on that as an Azure function, and I think that loads plenty fast when I think about and I see this website, right? You wouldn't even know that it's Blazor if I told you, unless I told you, right? So where'd it go? The total size that it installs here, because it does all the tree shaking stuff. I'll do a hard reset. Nah, it's not going to show me. Application here. Manifest. You're not going to show me. You're not going to show me the storage. That's what I'm thinking. Local storage. Rest in peace, the Cleveland Hat Club. Sorry. Is it? Where'd it go? It's not cookies. This one. There's the Blazor resources. So you can see all the content in there. You're not going to show me. Right, and you can see all the DLLs that it's downloaded, and it downloaded and cached. So whenever there's a patch to one of these are all tree shaken, and it's only the things that I need that are loaded up here. JSON, system core, numerics. I'm not sure why I got system XML and system XML link. They should have gone away. But everything's cached out here locally. There's my client DLL for interacting. Oh, I bet you I got the XML because of Fauna. No matter. So runs fast, looks good, and because this is a static web app, it can't be pre-rendered on the server. So it's really just showing you the content as it's painted, as the browser goes through it. So I'm pretty happy with that. I was able to put this together in about a day or two, and I slowly add new hats to this from the collection. I have these pictures taken by this camera here in front of me that I'm looking at. I have a thing that runs on stream where it'll detect what hat I'm wearing. It bounces it off of an Azure image detection service, and it'll tell you what hat I'm wearing based on the logo on the front. Kind of cool. Kind of cool to play with. So that's Blazor Static Web Apps. That's all I really wanted to go into about that tonight. Yes, checkboxes. All right. So Project Tie. Let's talk about Project Tie briefly. Project Tie lets you build, debug, and deploy microservices faster. So we've talked a lot over the last few years about things like Kubernetes for orchestrating containers to build your cloud scale applications, but it wasn't very .NET friendly. You ended up having to generate all these different configuration files and all the different references to the names of the containers and things back and forth to each other. And service discovery between all of these different microservices when you deployed was a pain in the neck, because as configuration changed in your pods and in your Kubernetes deployment, you had to change your code. You had to change configuration. So Tie lets you do service discovery with configuration conventions. So you can add dependencies easily, Redis, SQL Server, without writing new Docker files. You don't need to go and recompile things. So this means that you can more easily run and debug locally by using Tie to deploy containers to Kubernetes. Tie will do all of that configuration management and remapping for you. You get a cool local dashboard for metrics, logging, debugging, so you can see everything into your container pool using Tie, instead of having to go through all the rigmarole of configuring and all the Kubernetes features, layering them together. It's all built for you with Tie. Tie will also let you automatically Dockerize and deploy your series of microservices to Azure Kubernetes service. command line tool that has that all built in. It generates all the configuration for you appropriately and will upload to AKS. All right. Let's move into something that I'm not the most comfortable with, but I'm happy to talk about: Xamarin Forms. So we talked about how we wanted to get into Maui, .NET Maui, the multi-environment application user interface language, right? And we didn't quite get there. We're not there yet. It's going to be coming for .NET 6. So Xamarin Forms has been updated. We have Xamarin Forms 5. It lets you do beautiful design with brushes, shapes, and paths, build those mobile applications, control templating for native controls, better XAML experiences. The new hot reload it's the real deal. You know, the folks who are developing with Node.js and get that immediate reload as they change code, you get hot reload on your mobile devices as you're building on Windows. Android or iOS, you're building on Windows, you can connect to your mobile device and you'll get an immediate update as you change the user interface on the Windows device, on your iPhone. Awesome stuff to see. I've got a couple projects that I'm getting set up with Xamarin Forms 5 on my own here that I can't wait to dig in and work with. Xamarin Forms in Azure, something that are doing better together. Governments, healthcare, other organizations are rapidly creating safe and secure apps to address COVID-19. You see people building contact tracing apps. Because it's easy to stand these up. It's easy to get these working with your existing services, with your existing .NET deployments. And the Japanese are doing this as well. So something that you can check out, there's the COVID-19 radar on GitHub. The folks in Japan are using that data to help build and work with contact tracing in Japan, right? We want to deal with COVID-19. Get this done with. We don't want a COVID-21. All right. So looking forward, thinking this through, we've seen Xamarin Forms 5. Project Thai is in the works. It was an experiment, but we think we might be doing something more with this. Blazor, WinForms WPF updates, right? It's a complete experience now. We're seeing all the new features of C#9. If you're an F# person, F#5 is available as well. And we're moving forward. .NET 5 is done. It's out. This is November 2020 that was released. Every year going forward, you're going to see a new version of .NET. .NET 6, .NET 7, .NET 8, .NET 9. You heard them. They gave it .NET 9. 5 years out, all right? The LTS versions that you see outlined here, this one, .NET 6 and .NET 8, those LTS, that's long-term support, those versions have 3 years of support behind them, okay? Free. You don't have to pay anything. You get that no matter whether you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, you're building for mobile, you're building for IoT, you're building for Azure. 3 years of support, 1 year of paid support after that if you need some time to transition to migrate to the next version. The idea here is we want to make sure that we keep your bits fresh and secure so that you don't have to worry about, gosh, I've got stuff from .NET Framework 2 sitting on this machine that I need to figure out how to update. We're giving you a very clear and defined timeline. When the new versions of .NET are coming, when the versions of .NET support expire, and if you want to maintain that support, you can plan for it going forward. .NET Core 3.1 is the current version with LTS. It is I shouldn't have said that. Back up. .NET Core 3.1 is the long-term supported release of .NET Core. .NET 5 is the current release of .NET that you can use so that you have that bleeding edge, let me experiment, see the new features version. You have until November 2022, you'll have full support for .NET Core 3.1. .NET Core 3.1 came out in November, December of 2019. So you'll have 3 years. That takes you out to 2022. So you'll actually have a little bit of overlap where there will be 2 LTS support versions available 3.1, and 6 in 2021-2022 timeframe. The current versions, like .NET 5, support drops for them 3 months after the next version is released. So if there's a 5.1 that's released, 5.0 no longer supported after that. .NET Core 3.0 was a current release, and because .NET 5 was released, .NET Core 3 will no longer be supported as of end of January, beginning of February. That will no longer be supported, and you'll be required to move to either .NET Core 3.1 or .NET 5 if you want to maintain support. You can continue using them. Nothing says you can't, but if you want support, you need to move forward. So this helps us, right? Like I said, keep folks in a well-defined, well-known support structure going forward. You're going to get LTS supports on even-numbered releases. This way, there's always at least one LTS. You'll have a little bit of overlap where there's 2 LTSs available. Minor releases will be completed as needed. If there's something that comes up, if little company based out of a garage invents new technology, foo, and we want to make sure that you can target foo with .NET 5, well, there'll be a .NET 5.1 that supports foo that's released at whatever time. Okay, as needed, those new minor versions are made available. When we think about .NET 6, .NET 6 has a lot that we want to jam into it, we want to get done. And at themes of .NET, you can find this list of issues that we're looking at that we've proposed for .NET 6. There's all kinds of great stuff in here. We want to improve, right? We start with these tentpole ideas, these themes, these pillars that we call them around it. The first pillar that you see here, we want .NET to appeal to net new developers, students, and new technologists. We want to make sure that that folks say, you know what, yeah, C# and .NET that's a pretty good choice that I want to use to learn programming. So that's a goal that we have for .NET 6, is to improve that. We want to improve the client app development experience. Windows apps, we want to make sure that that's a great experience. We want that, consequently, we want Blazor developers to be able to target and deploy their applications to desktop platforms, allowing them to run natively. That's a pretty cool idea. That's a proposal for .NET 6. Desktop developers can package, distribute, release, and update their applications to multiple desktop platforms and architectures. You can see that cost is extra large. That's the promise of .NET MAUI. Xamarin developers can upgrade to and use the latest .NET SDKs in their existing applications. This is the Highlander. This is the there can be only one .NET idea. All right. So, and all kinds of supporting ideas here that need to be done to make that happen. You can find more of that at themes of .NET. These are the ideas, the proposals of what they want to put into .NET 6. So .NET MAUI didn't make it to .NET 5, but let's talk about this for a little bit. This is a big concept. This made a lot of noise. We heard from you. We heard when we announced .NET MAUI at Build. A lot of folks were interested in this. It was interesting to see the number of folks that were running user group presentations, that were running conference presentations, who had nothing to do with the .NET team, and they were teaching all about .NET MAUI. We didn't have a line of code written for this thing yet, and people were giving full conference talks and keynotes about .NET MAUI. We're like, hey, can you tell us about that? Because we'd like to do something with it too. .NET MAUI is the next evolution of Xamarin Forms. It's going to allow you to build using that same concept, that same architecture, and extend those concepts from mobile to desktop scenarios with the same user interface controls, but rebuilt from the ground up for performance and extensibility. That's huge. That's big for those folks who are mobile developers, because you're going to get the same experience and be able to go everywhere with it. That's huge for folks who are Windows Forms or WPF developers who are looking around and saying, hey, we haven't gotten anything since 2009, 2010, and don't give us that Windows 8 store stuff. We want to build for the desktop. And that whole UWP thing doesn't do anything for us. If you feel that way and you want a top to bottom .NET user interface framework, that's where .NET MAUI is going, and it's going to build on the success of Xamarin Forms. It's Xamarin integrated into .NET. That's been a long time coming, right? Xamarin has been part of Microsoft for a while here, but we're finally going to merge it in, and we're going to bring everything that's great about Xamarin to the other .NET development frameworks. So you can go to github.com/.net/MAUI or .NET/Android or /Mac iOS and see the different ways that we're going to be building and integrating directly with those platforms. Custom .NET experience, common .NET experiences, I'm sorry, you're going to be able to use the same CLI, the same command line to compile and build and start a new template for .NET MAUI projects. You're going to be able to build with Xamarin in Visual Studio Code. That's crazy, right? Visual Studio Code is the most popular text editor, code editor in the world, and you're going to be able to use it to build iPhone apps, Android apps. We're going to support Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows out of the box with MAUI, and modern app models like Blazor and Comet. And Comet is our MVU framework, right? You have model view, view model. Well, this is model view update. It's a very code-based way to design and develop applications. This is all very experimental. The modern app models, particularly Comet, extremely experimental, and something that we're looking to hear some feedback on. I forget exactly where it is on GitHub, but it's something that our friend and fellow live coder James Clancy has been building and working on live on Twitch. So if you go to twitch.tv/Clancy, you'll see him working on Comet when he is streaming. Really cool stuff to be able to follow along and see. So what are the goals of .NET MAUI? Quality. We want 12 months of Xamarin quality releases, a reorganized project structure, standardized class naming and structure. We want to get things aligned so that you don't have to go figure out all the differences between the different objects and things. Let's get it all in line so that it looks like it's all part of one framework. Performance. We want the startup of our MAUI applications to be less than a second. Responsive user interface rendering, animations, and transitions, reduced view nesting. We don't want to have views inside of views inside of views. Be able to build one view to paint and build our mobile and desktop applications. Very fast performance, and it looks nice, looks beautiful. Great design, simple, elegant, with a default UI theme. Is it Fluent UI that the folks from the Windows group have been building and working on? The material design from the folks at Google. You're going to see a simple and elegant theme you're going to be able to work with. Easy control extensibility, quick cross-platform templating, just like you can with ASP.NET Core, be able to file new project and compile that and run it on Windows, Mac, or Linux. We want you to be able to quickly take a MAUI app and run it on desktop, iOS, or Android. And there we go. There's the 4 platforms we want to support out of the box: Mac OS, Windows, iOS, and Android. All right. Let's talk about some differences, some similarities and some differences. Xamarin Forms 5 and .NET MAUI. So Android, we're going to support API level 21 and later on .NET MAUI, where Xamarin Forms is API 19 and later. iOS 9 through 15, well, .NET MAUI is going to go 10 and later. We've already started working on some of that, porting it and getting it working. Linux support is going to come from the community. We're going to give them all the tools they need so they can integrate and build the appropriate GTK sharp user interface that fits their needs, but all of the capabilities, all of the libraries are going to be there for the Linux community to pick up and run with that. Mac OS was being supported by the community in Xamarin Forms. Well, Microsoft is picking that up with MAUI. Tizen, right? So that's the operating system you may have on on your Samsung watch, your Samsung mobile device, your Samsung phones. If you don't have a Galaxy, you don't have an Android type of Samsung phone, your Samsung toaster, your Samsung refrigerator, Samsung washer. If it's got a screen from Samsung and it's a utility, it's running Tizen, and you can run .NET on that. Well, .NET MAUI will be able to compile and run on Tizen going forward. Windows, of course, it was UWP, Microsoft, and the WPF support came from the community with Xamarin Forms, but in .NET MAUI, WinUI 3 is going to be supported by Microsoft, and any WPF bindings are going to come from the community. We want you to start building and using the MAUI user interfaces, the .NET MAUI user interfaces going forward. So you can see going down, but particularly I want to be sure to point out here in the miscellaneous section, .NET, right? You got support for these different frameworks, and they were different .NET flavors. It's all .NET 6. There's only one .NET that you need. The project system was Franken project. You had different projects laying around. There were different formats that kind of adhered to the CS Proj model. They're all the SDK style going forward. And they all run and build with the .NET SDK, where .NET SDK wasn't even a thing back in the day. So, evolving the architecture before, when we were building with Xamarin Forms, our renderers were tightly coupled to our button and other controls. Well, now you're going to have all your different types of buttons that adhere to an I button that appropriately are handled by a button handler available in MAUI. That's a heck of a lot better reuse instead of having to go back and forth and define these for every which thing. You're going to end up with a startup class inside of your .NET MAUI project that is going to have a Forms app. App.useForms, and pass in the type of app, my app class, to kick things off here. Register lifecycle handlers. If it's Android, well, here's my Android lifecycle handler. If it's iOS, an iOS lifecycle handler, and any other plugins that you may need. So it looks and feels very similar. Hey, I didn't want to show that yet. It looks and feels like a WinForms, a WinForms, ASP.NET, a .NET app at this point. Now, Mac Catalyst, I'm not familiar. I forget what this is. Being able to run on a Mac. And you can see this is .NET running on a Mac, and it looks and feels appropriate. It's a local app. It's a Mac app that's been built and runs inside of and on a Mac. Very cool stuff. I'm not going to let this run, but this is from oh my gosh, I'm forgetting Frank's last name. Proclarium. I forget Frank's last name. You can check that out on your own. Support, of course, for WinUI 3, of course, the Windows user interface components, that works with Xamarin Forms now. The timeline for .NET MAUI, you're going to start to see these things happening. Xamarin Forms becoming system.maui is been delayed temporarily. We're going to figure out what we want to do with this. But changing handlers, removing obsolete capabilities, obsolete tags, the host builder for the .NET Unified Experience, these are all in progress. We're building these things now so that we have the framework laid. Of course, we're going into holiday break here, so these things are going to slow for a little bit. But data pages, folks weren't using that. Themes, folks weren't using that either. They're gone. All of the reflection that was being done in the startup registry, gone. Making it simpler, easier, faster, and more compliant going forward. Kruger, thank you, Frank Kruger. Oh, how could I forget? but we've committed in first quarter, second quarter of 2021 to get these things done. So by the time that Microsoft Build rolls around in that May, June timeframe, I don't know when it is yet. I haven't seen any dates on this yet. Cross-platform lifecycle, move and expand layout option for stack layouts, width and height, getting that all done and behaving appropriately. Xamarin Essentials, get that merged in so it really becomes part of the standard .NET MAUI experience. So many folks were using it, so why not just make it part of the experience? Improve native images, housekeeping on iAnimatable, behavior trigger inheritance, Mac OS with Catalyst, Win user interface, 3, pending their general availability. We're committed to that in the first half of 2021. It's coming. We're getting there. All right. And we're going to move to those SDK style projects. You're going to be able to use try convert. Now, try convert is out there. It'll try to convert your existing CS proj to a .NET 5, .NET 6 SDK style project, right? Where all of the NuGet package references are inside the CS proj file. So try convert is I think there's updates out there. There's a preview for it that will make its best effort to maintain your CS proj, convert it to the new style with the appropriate target framework monikers, so you can run from the command line and check out integration with the IDE. It's not there yet. They're working on it. And when you're targeting .NET MAUI, the namespaces are going to be converted in the future. Try convert should try to get that converted. We have some tools that are going to go through and apply some of those simple refactorings that we know you need to do when you convert. Go through, look at the files, and see if we can make those system dot namespace conversions, the other simple conversions that we know you need to do, apply them automatically. You would have had to have done them in Visual Studio. We'll do them programmatically when you convert. In fact, we built that on top of IntelliCode. So just like in IntelliCode, right? If you do the same fix 3 times to something, it remembers that, and when it sees that a similar pattern in your code, it'll suggest and allow you to automatically complete that fix automatically. Custom renderers, well, if you have any of those, we recommend you remove those you no longer need and replace the rest with handlers. There's a built-in adapter shim in Xamarin Forms Legacy that you can use to move those along and get them into Xamarin Forms, and they'll be ready for .NET MAUI. Get rid of your deprecated APIs, fix any of your older APIs, build and fix them, get them ready so they're modern and ready to go. The big point that we want to make sure you know here is we're not requiring a rewrite. You're going to be able to do some slight changes to your code and continue to build and work with your applications. So Xamarin Forms Legacy is coming. That's going to be a NuGet package that we're going to put things in that it's going to end up being like a shim, right? To maintain compatibility with your existing .NET Forms stuff, your things, until you can complete the migration, complete any of that stuff that needs to change over for .NET MAUI. So it provides compatibility, it provides renderers, and provides access to features that are obsoleted, so that eventually, after you migrate, you can pull this out and you're now fully on .NET MAUI. There's a third-party ecosystem that is eager and excited to get up and running here. All of the control vendors, the third-party libraries are getting ready to go. We recommend that you follow with them so you can update to .NET MAUI optimized packages. When they're ready to go, you'll be able to recompile and target the .NET 6 target frameworks at that time when they're ready. The adapter shims that are going to be available in Xamarin Forms Legacy will get you the rest of the way there. Any framework libraries that you may be using, like Prism or Fresh MVVM, MVVM Cross, they're going to be updating, and you'll see .NET MAUI optimized packages for those as well. There's a monthly sync call for Xamarin. You'll see a Xamarin stand-up that happens once a month on the Visual Studio channel on Twitch. Open invitation. Anybody can tune in, ask questions, and talk about this. They had a version of this 2 weeks ago, I think it was. The video is out there. It's on YouTube. It's also on Twitch. You can go back and check out all of the discussion about what's happening with .NET MAUI as they prep for the migration over the next year. So what do I need to do? How long is the transition period here for me, Microsoft? What do I need to be aware of? We've already done the announcements. The plans have started. We're beginning migration help and product guidance now. In November 2021, so in about a year, Xamarin Forms 5 with the latest iOS and Android support will be available, and .NET MAUI should be in general availability at that time. We're going to end support for Xamarin Forms in November 2022, and .NET MAUI vNext will be available, and you should be able to be completely migrated at that point. So you have about 2 years to get your Xamarin Forms applications ready and converted to .NET MAUI. All right. That's what I have. We got about 5 minutes left. I've seen a couple questions coming through here. Any other questions? Anything that we need to take a look at I can go back to? Or are we checking out the Browns game? How are they doing against those always tough Baltimore Ravens, nay, the once and dearly departed original Browns? Or do we not say that? Is that not a thing? I don't know. Feeling good? Just scored 6-0. So is that they didn't kick a field goal yet? They didn't kick the extra point yet, or is it 2 field goals? Let me know. So well, if there aren't any questions, there you go, 7-0. Thank you, Mark. If there aren't any questions, I'll give you 5 minutes back so you can make it to the game, grab a fine frosty beverage. Thank you so much for having me, Sam. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the group, and I hope everybody has a great holiday this season.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you joining us, and great presentation.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Let me just go through a couple of wrap-up announcements.
All right, I'll drop. Have a good one.
All right, thanks again. Take care. Okay, so to wrap up tonight's presentation, we have a couple tech events that I always like to mention at the end. These are already posted on my blog, so you can utilize the links there. But tomorrow, December 15th, the JavaScript Club, they're going to be meeting online, and they're going to discuss cognitive services and building against biases. And on December 16th, Wednesday, We Can Code It, they're going to have an event online about imposter syndrome and overcoming that. And then December 17th is glog.net, or the Great Lakes User Group. And they're also having a virtual meeting that evening, and that's going to be on Power BI tools. On January 20th in 2021 is going to be the Hudson Software Craftsmanship Group, and they're also going to be meeting online. And then January 28th brings us to our January meeting of this group. It has not been organized as of yet, but the presentation will take place. Just need to find a speaker to fill that time slot. Those details will be taken care of. As far as conferences, the only one that's happening that I know of before end of year is SQL Saturday in Lagos, Nigeria. And although it seemed like far away, everything is virtual, so it's only a click away. And you can access that through sqlsaturday.com/1008. And for those of you not familiar with SQL Saturdays, these are day-long events relating to SQL Server and other data products. They have several tracks that run parallel regarding data performance and analysis, development features in SQL Server, Azure SQL, BI, a variety of different topics all revolving around data. Chances are, if you're developing an application, you're going to be utilizing data to some extent. So I urge you to check that out. And as far as my contact information, if needed, you can reach out to me, snasser at NIS Technologies. My Twitter handle is @SamNasser, and I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions regarding the links that I posted regarding the tech events, that will be posted on my blog, samnasser.blogspot.com. So with that, unless there's any questions, I thank you all for attending, and we'll let you get to the Browns game. Go Browns. And of course, hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a great holiday.
Thanks, Sam.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, everyone. Good night.